Hello students, today's agenda is to check homework. We'll be doing a small warm-up and you will learn about the absolute value. We'll do 2.12. Students will be able to solve equations involving absolute value with 2 steps. I recommend that you do the warm-up first. Take a couple of minutes, pause the video, and then try it with, and then compare it with us. Okay, so let's begin. So from the previous lesson, we learned that what you're going to do is to take this out and have the answer once negative and once positive. So we're going to put x plus 3 equals negative 9 and x plus 3 equals positive 9. We subtract 3 from both sides. This cancels and you get x equals negative 12. So that's one possible answer. The other one is subtract 3 from both sides. This cancel and you get x equals 9 minus 3 is 6. When you substitute, and I'm just going to do it with the first one, is negative 12 is the value of x. So negative 12 plus 3. Negative 12 plus 3 is equals to 9. Negative 12 plus 3 is negative 9, but it's inside of the absolute value. And then the absolute value of negative 9 is 9, so we can see that it is equal, so check. When we substitute with 6, it's going to be 6 plus 3 equals 9. It's actually a question. And 6 plus 3, the absolute value of 9, is it equal to 9? And the absolute value of 9, remember that these magic sticks will always make, once it's only one number, into a positive. So that's why, yes, it's equals to 9. For the second one, we have a negative and a negative together. We already said that two negatives together make the big plus. And so the absolute value of 8 plus 3 is the absolute value of 8 plus 3 is 11, which is equals to absolute value of 11 is 11. Okay, so that's the answer. And for these ones, we had two answers for number 1. For number 3, the absolute value of negative 8 minus 2, remember that this is not a subtraction anymore, it's just this is a negative 8, this is a negative 2, so in total I have negative 10. These magic sticks make the negative 10 into positive. Again, remember that the absolute value means the distance between 0 and that number, and distance is always positive, so that's why it changes to positive. Number 4, the difference between negative 7 and negative 5. So from the previous lesson, we learned that all you have to do when they say difference, you just put minus right there. So negative 7 minus negative 5, negative 7 minus negative 5. Two negatives together make the big plus. Now if I have a negative 7 and positive 5, that's the absolute value of negative 2. And the absolute value of negative 2 is positive 2. Now if we graph it, and I know I have very tight space, but we have, let's see, let's start with just negative 5, negative 6, negative 7. We know that there are more numbers there and more that way, but it's only between those two, it's only 2 spaces, which is what we found out. How far apart are negative 9 and 3? Again, we find the absolute value. We put -9. Far apart also means minus, but we put it where the word and is. So -9 minus 3. -9 minus 3 inside of the absolute value. -9 and -3 make -12. Remember that when they have the same sign, you just add and keep the greater sign. So -12 inside of the absolute value. What is the absolute value? It just makes it positive, right? Because distance is always positive. If you look at the number line, sorry. Let's start at, we have 3, 2, 1, 0, -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, -6, -7, -8, -9. The distance between those two numbers is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 spaces, which is what we found in here. Okay. So now let's start with some two-step absolute value equations. Number 1 says the absolute value of 3x plus 2 is equals to 7. Now, if you recall from the previous lesson, what we have to do is we know that anything inside could be positive or negative, right? Becomes positive. So that's why we put 3x plus 2 equals -7, because it's possible that all of this is -7, and then when you get it out of this absolute value, it becomes positive. But at the same time, it can also be positive. So 3x plus 2 equals 7, because the absolute value of 7 is also 7. We start solving. If we're adding, the opposite is to subtract. 3x equals, remember that subtracting doesn't necessarily mean subtracting. Now we take this as this being -7, this is -2. When we have two negatives, it's addition of negatives, okay? We add and keep the greater sign. 7 plus 2 is 9, and the greater sign is 7, which is a negative. Finally, if we're multiplying, the opposite is to divide by 3. This cancels, and x is equals to -3. That's one of the answers, one of the possible answers. On the other one is we subtract 2 from both sides. 3x equals 7 minus 2, 5. And we subtract because when we have different signs, we subtract and keep the greater sign, okay? Finally, if we're multiplying, the opposite is to divide. And in here, we're going to get a fraction. How many times does the 3 go into 5? 1. 1 times 3 is 3. To 5, you have 2 left, and just bring down the same denominator. So that's the second answer for that one. Okay, number 2. Oh, let me sorry, let me just replace it so that you can see how that looks. So if we substitute the x, we have the absolute value of 3 times -3. 3 times -3 plus 2. Is it equal to 7? And then 3 times -3 is -9 plus 2. Is it equal to 7? Then -9 plus 2 is -7. Is it equal to 7? And we take the -7 out of the absolute value, which is +7. Yes, it's equals to -7, so we say check. The same thing here, but to replace it, we're going to make it into an improper fraction, from mixed to improper, which is 3 times 1 is 3, plus 2 is 5/3. Okay, so it's going to be 3 times 5/3, and then plus 2. And is that equal to 7? We put it over 1 and multiply straight. 3 times 5 is 15. 1 times 3 is 3, plus 2. Is that equal to 7? 15 divided by 3 is 5, plus 2. Is that equal to 7? And of course, I'm just bringing down the absolute value. 5 plus 2 is positive 7 inside of the absolute value. Is that equal to 7? We take the absolute value of 7, which is 7, and yes, it's equals to 7, so we say check. Okay, I'm gonna do the checkup test only for that one so that we can, since you already know how to work with this, but same thing. We have 2x minus 1 equals negative 11, and then 2x minus 1 equals positive 11. And so we start canceling. If we're subtracting, the opposite is to add 1. But remember that adding doesn't really mean adding sometimes. If you have different signs, we subtract and keep the greater sign. So it's going to be negative 11 minus 1 is 10. Then, if we're multiplying, the opposite is to divide. This cancels, and you get x is equals to negative divided by positive is negative. 10 divided by 2 is 5. In here, in division is not the greater sign, you just divide the signs. Remember that if the signs are the same, the answer is positive. If the signs are different, the answer is negative. Now let's do the other one. We add 1 to both sides. We get 2x equals 12. If we're multiplying, the opposite is to divide. This cancels, and x is equals to 6. Okay, I'm going to do the checkup test just verbally, but in here, 2 times negative 5 is negative 10. Negative 10 minus 1 is negative 11, but we take it out of the absolute value, that becomes positive 11, so yeah, it makes sense. With a 6, 2 times 6 is 12. 12 minus 1 is 11. The absolute value of positive 11 is 11, okay? But you can write it on the side if you wish to check. Number 3. We have x divided by 5 plus 3 equals negative 2, and the same, x divided by 5, by 5 plus 3 equals positive 2. We subtract 3 from both sides. This cancel. X divided by 5 equals, remember that if both are negative, then it's addition of negatives. We add them and keep the greater sign. So negative 3 plus 2 is 5. Finally, this is division. In division, we don't change the sign, and we cancel by multiplying. So if we're dividing by 5, we're going to multiply by 5 on both sides. These cancel, and we get x equals negative times positive, negative. 5 times 5, 25. So it's negative 25. For the next one, if we're adding 3, the opposite is to subtract 3. We get x divided by 5 equals, now in here we have a positive and a negative, we subtract and keep the greater sign. So because the greater is negative, we're going to get a negative. and subtract 3 minus 2 is 1. The last step, if we're dividing, the opposite is to multiply both sides. These cancel, and x is equal to negative times positive is negative. It's not the greater one, okay? And here is, the signs are different, the answer is negative. And 1 times 5 is 5. Now you can do the mental check. Negative 25 divided by 5 is negative 5, plus 3 is negative 2, but taking it out of the absolute value, negative 2, what is the absolute value? Positive 2, so that's right. The negative 5 is negative 5 divided by positive 5 is negative 1, plus 3 becomes positive 2, and the absolute value of positive 2 is 2. So those are correct. Okay, number 4. Negative x minus 5 equals negative 6. Negative x minus 5 equals positive 6. So the first step, we add 5 to both sides. We get negative x equals different signs, so we subtract. When there are different signs, we subtract and keep the greater sign. It's going to be negative 6 minus 5 is 1. Now we cannot have a negative variable. Whenever you have something like this, it's like you're multiplying negative 1 times x, so you're going to divide by negative 1. Negative divided by negative cancel. X divided by 1 is x, equals negative divided by negative cancels or is positive, and 1 divided by 1 is 1. So that's the first answer. Now let's find the other one. So in here you have negative 5. We add 5 to both sides. These cancel, and we get negative x equals 6 plus 5 is 11. If we're multiplying by negative 1, we divide by negative 1. This cancels, and you get x equals positive divided by negative, negative. 11 divided by 1, 11. Now for this one, I do want to write the checkup just because it can be tricky because of the negative. So is it equal to 6? No, negative, we're just going to bring it over. We're going to write this number that is the value of x. This negative is from here, not from here, okay? Then we bring down the minus 5. And then in here we say that because we have two negatives, we add them and keep the greater sign. So negative 1 and negative 5 is negative 6 inside of the absolute value. Is it equal to 6? Now this magic absolute value sticks. Make this number positive, and so we say, yeah, 6 is equal to 6, so check. I'm going to do the checkup since I'm using a different coloring here for the second one. And so we get, again, negative from here, negative 11 from here. So now you have two negatives, and then minus 5 inside of the absolute value. Is it equal to 6? Two negatives together make the big plus. So that means that the 11 becomes positive. And then we say that if this is positive 11 and negative 5, subtract and leave the greater sign. So 11 minus 5 is 6. Is it equal to 6? The absolute value of positive 6 is positive 6. So 6 is equal to 6, so check. Okay, let's do one last one. And once you take out the absolute value, remember that the answer has to always, always, always be positive. So for number 5, in here it says that the absolute value of something becomes -9. So as soon as you see that, you're just gonna put not possible. Why? Because the absolute value of an expression will always be positive, okay? Again, if you see the negative in the answer after the absolute value, then you just put not possible. And you can't do anything, you cannot solve for this one. One more thing, if there is a negative in here and there are other things going on outside, that's a different story, but that's for another lesson. But if you just see nothing else other than the absolute value with an expression inside and a negative, just put not possible. With this, you're able to do 2.12. I hope you like the lesson and have fun.